Alright, hi again everyone. We're back here looking at my aquarium, looking at some do-it-yourself things that you can do for keeping it in this case a larger aquarium, but keeping aquariums in general, looking at some ways that you can do things on the cheap and still have a pretty nice looking aquarium in your home without spending all the money and being able to work things on your own and have a little bit of fun with it at the same time rather than just having everything prepackaged from the store. Today we're going to talk about plants, and we're going to look at the plants I've got in here, some of the different species, why I've got them, and taking care of them, and we're going to talk about some do-it-yourself methods for taking care of plants and some do-it-yourself dosing. So first, let's look at the species that I've got here. Start with this guy right here. This is jungle vallisneria. It's also called water celery, I believe, but usually it goes at the pet stores as jungle val. And sorry about the fish; they're extremely hungry, pretty much around the clock. And so if they see me in front of the aquarium, they're going to go right there. But they'll get in the way, and that's all right. Jungle val is going to get pretty long. You can see my aquarium is 6 feet long, and it goes pretty much all the way to the other end. And if I let this grow without trimming it down, this would just grow all the way to the end of the aquarium. One of the problems with it is that it will create like a giant mat at the top of the aquarium and shade off the bottom, and so you can have some problems with low light and other plants being shaded off and losing their leaves if you don't keep it trimmed. But having a river aquarium, having a stream aquarium, I like the way that it drifts with the water current, and if you keep it shorter, it'll kind of dangle in the water, which is also a nice effect. This plant happens to propagate itself by runners, and you can see this one is sending one down right there. It's not really great focus, but you can see it kind of sticking out there. That'll reach down into the soil, and then another plant will pop up, and we can see an example of that back here. You can see this one has a runner there, and it's also got another runner on the right side of it, and there's a little plantlet there sticking up out of the aquarium. They're sticking up out of the sand there, and I've got a lot of plants kind of smashed in back there, but there's another quite a bit larger one coming up back there too. So they like to send out runners, and if they're given the right conditions, they'll get a little colony going where they'll just set up a little spot where it'll just be vallisneria only. Pretty low maintenance. As I mentioned in the last video on the rocks, they are a good species of plant if you have a lot of rocks in the aquarium and are dealing with high levels of carbonate hardness and general hardness also, because vallisneria along with Elodea and Anarcharis are able to convert calcium carbonate in the water into make use of it as their source of carbon. So they don't need a lot of CO2 in the water, because if the water is hard, they'll make use of the hard water and get their carbon from that. So that makes them a real good beginner plant. They do need a little bit of light, not super duper bright light, but they do need some, and if the light isn't bright enough, they will start to melt. Another thing that goes with their care is that you can see that my plants, the roots are somewhat above the top of the water. You see this guy is, I'm sorry, not above the water, but above the soil level. And this one too back here, if we can see it. Maybe we can't see it. No, you can't get to it. All the roots, the crown of the plant is up above the soil level, and you have to grow them like that. If you get vallisneria and you bury the crown of the plant into the soil, the whole plant will die eventually, if not sooner than later. And later, we're talking like within like a couple weeks, it'll just start to melt. So when you plant vallisneria, you need to stick it into the soil and then give it a little bit of a tug so that the crown of the plant is up above the soil level. Now the next plant I've got, and you can see I've got quite a bit of them actually, is just standard Amazon sword plant. And one of the reasons that I like Amazon sword plant is, one, is that it's very bushy, and so it takes up a lot of space. which is good if you don't want a whole lot of plants, but you want something to kind of cover up the background. And then also Amazon swords, which is one of the reasons why I've got some of the water is missing, is that I'm trying to grow them immersed, which is that Amazon sword plants, if they can reach the top of the water, they will start to stick some of their leaves up out of the water and start to grow above the water level. I don't know if that's going to happen in this case, but I'm giving it a shot. We'll see. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not, but Amazon swords in general, and I've got, this is just a standard Amazon sword. There's a whole ton of different varieties of them. This is another one, and you can see that this one looks completely different. This one's got a real broad spade-like leaf. There's a brand new leaf growing down there. This one will definitely grow up out of the water, and grows up out of the water all the time. It's trimmed down right now because, like I said, this is a newer setup. I had a lot of dieback, and a lot of these, this plant was throwing these leaves up all across the top of the water, and it was actually burning itself on the light fixture. So I had to cut a lot of it off the surface of the water. But this is called a marble queen, and you can't really see it from here, but the leaves actually have a mottled appearance on them. They have some light spots on them. Real pretty. But both of those are Amazon sword plants, different varieties of Amazon sword plants. This one also, something that Amazon swords will do quite frequently. You can see there's some above the water, but where do we go? Oh, there we go. This guy here has sent out a runner, and they will do this very frequently. And I've got two brand new plants that I've pinned down with a rock, and they're growing down into the soil level now. Eventually I'll cut them free and they'll be on their own. But they will send out these little runners, and there's another little guy growing halfway up. They'll send out these runners, and sometimes you can get 10 plants out of a spike, and so that's always a bonus. They propagate very easily. The standard Amazon sword plants also, you can see the great big root mass there. They'll start to grow plants off the side of them, and this one could actually be divided into about 3 or 4 different plants. I'm not going to do that because I like the way that one looks, but you can also divide them up based on how many clumps they have. So it's real hardy plant. Some of them do require a lot of light. That marble queen back there, if it doesn't get a lot of light, it tends to throw its leaves up above the water trying to reach for light. I haven't had that happen with standard Amazon swords, but overall they've been pretty easy to take care of. They do require a lot of root feeding, and I'll get to my plant tabs in a second and show you what you can do for real easy do-it-yourself plant tabs rather than spending 15 bucks a drop on, 10 plant tabs, which will last you about a month, and you've got to go buy another one the next month, and it runs up the bill a little bit. So it's Amazon sword plants. Pretty easy, good beginner plant. Doesn't need a whole lot of light, but if you don't give it enough, it will start to show. It'll start. You can see some of the tips from. And if you watch some of my other videos, you know that this aquarium has gone through quite a bit of change. I didn't take care of it for a while because I had some things in life going on, and a lot of the surface of the water got shaded off, and these plants started to die back quite a bit, and you can see some of the dieback on the leaves, and they will show when they're not doing well. So easy plant, but still take care. Still got to fertilize them, still got to make sure that they get their light source. So let's go on to the next plant. This is dwarf arrowhead, or dwarf sagittaria. We actually, I'm from Chicagoland, and we get 2 different species of sagittaria, possibly 3 now that I'm thinking about it, but I think 2 for sure. It's commonly referred to as arrowhead, and it's a marginal plant that will get anywhere from about 1.5 feet to 2 feet tall, and it throws up a leaf that's shaped like an arrowhead, and they generally grow in real muddy areas where the water is extremely shallow, and they can grow up out of the water, but they want their roots under the water. I've tried growing the natural species, the local species, and they have not done well in the aquarium. They just seem to always melt. I've tried doing it with fully grown mature plants. I've tried doing it with seedlings that I've pulled out of my pond from the year before because they seed pretty readily, and never have they done real well. They'll throw out a foot-long leaf that'll look like these little tiny ones here, but then it just melts off after about a month, so I haven't really gone back to them. These ones, though, pretty common aquarium plant. Generally, they stay about that size there. I've heard them getting about a foot tall. If you keep the lights lower, they'll start to get longer in order to reach up to the light, but this is going to be a common size for these. Those bigger ones are actually Amazon sword plants. They're smaller ones that I pulled off the big mothers. But these little guys, they do propagate by runner, which is why you can see that some of them are kind of close to each other because they've started to throw out runners. And they do want a decent amount of light. If the light gets restricted at all, they will start to die back pretty quickly. But given the right conditions, and it seems that they really do like to grow in the sand over growing in gravel. And that's not saying that they can't grow in gravel, but they have not. I've kept these things in here for about 1.5 years, and they have not spread out of this area right here, which is mostly sand. Whereas the rest of the plants will grow pretty well in the regular plant soil. So that's the Sagittaria, and let's look at a couple other ones. I don't have too many species in here. This one here is an Aponogeton. They can get pretty big. This one here is pretty tiny. Hello fish, you're in the way. This one here is pretty tiny, but they will get pretty big. There's one in the back right there. You can see that this guy's growing all the way up to the surface of the aquarium. They will get little flowers on them also. These ones I bought in a little box that had a few bulbs in it, and they come as a little stumpy bulb, and you plant it, and then a couple months later it pops up and you get this little guy in there. So they're pretty good plants, nothing too spectacular. They look kind of as far as simulating natural plants, they look similar to our curly pondweed that we have in Illinois, which has got a very seaweed-like look to it, and these guys kind of have the same thing, and I like that. But real minimal care, easy to care for, low to medium light, not a whole lot of requirements for them. I do believe, and I haven't had these guys long enough to be able to see it for myself, but I do believe that they have a natural life cycle, so they will melt off and have a dormant season, after which they'll come back. But I haven't seen that for myself. That's just secondhand information. We'll see what happens with them. This is a lily pad, some kind of tiger lily pad. I've found that lily pads do not do well with snails whatsoever, and which is why mine are so small, because every time it gets to a decent size, the snails show up and they chew the leaves right off of them, and they just do not do well with the snails. I keep lots of snails in here, and you can't really see too many of them, because the reason that I throw them in here is that a lot of these fish love to eat snails, especially this little darter right here. They will pull them right out of the shells and make use of them very readily. So I need to keep a lot of snails in here to keep my fish fed, and yeah, those snails just seem to tear apart lily pads. So if you've got a lot of snails, that may not be the plant for you. This plant back here, if you've seen me go by this as I'm doing this video and wondered what the heck that is, this is an experiment. I don't know if this plant's going to work or not. I've only had it in here for about a week. It seems to be doing pretty good, but we'll see what it does. This is a blue flag iris, which is native to Illinois. It's a bog iris. It's a water iris. We have 2 of them in Illinois. This one is our native variety. There's also a weed variety that's called the yellow flag iris. This one gets to be about 2 to 3 feet tall. Yellow flag iris will get to be about 6 feet tall, and they will grow completely submerged. It will come up out of the water eventually, but this is just a little one. I've got a lot of it in my pond outside, and I was able to grab a little section of it off and just see if it'll take off. I've got it held down by this big rock here. Basically grows in a giant tuber, and it'll send out quite a bit of roots. They have a really large and intricate root system. They will also get iris miners. Every now and then it's a good idea to dig up iris and break them in half, and there will be these little nasty looking grubs in there with huge teeth. You just got to pull those out and get rid of them. But we'll see if this takes off. My only concern about it, not that it won't do well under the water, it'll do perfectly well under the water, but my concern being that it's a full sun plant, and I don't know if the LED is going to be able to provide it with the light that it needs. So we'll see what happens. Maybe my lights are bright enough, maybe they're not. We'll find out. Hopefully they're bright enough and this thing will pop up over the edge of the water and kind of cover up some of this filter. And the leaves are very coarse, very thick and hard. So when they pop up, I don't think that they're going to get sucked into the filter. Hopefully they don't. They should be able to stand up on their own. They will get much thicker than they are at the moment. This one got turned upside down at some point, and it's started to regrow on its own, which is why I pulled it out, because it's still small enough. And the root base was very thin, as opposed to a lot of the other ones. The root base the plant itself, depending on how large it is, the plants can weigh 10-15 pounds just because of the root zone. So we'll see how this guy goes. Hopefully it does well. You can try them in your aquarium. They are just normal pond plants. So you can find them at pond stores, you can find them at garden centers. See if it works. I think that's pretty much it as far as my the kind of plants that I've got in here. So we're going to take a look at some of the DIY methods that I use to take care of the plants. So down here I've got several products. One of these obviously is Flourish. It's pretty standard aquarium aquarium additive and fertilizer. It's going to supply most of my micronutrients. It's pretty much just a comprehensive fertilizer. For my macros, though, you can see two products here that look really out of place. And if you don't know what this is, if you do know what this is, you're probably laughing already. If you don't know what this is, prepare to be surprised. But yep, you read it right. That's an enema. The enema the main product in an enema is sodium phosphate. So you're going to get your phosphorus from this. It's a real good and cheap way to add phosphorus to your aquarium, as opposed to buying expensive additives or something like that. A box of 3 of these size bottles runs like $1.50, $2, and you only use, in a 30-gallon aquarium, you might use like 2 drops of it every, maybe every couple of days, or maybe once a week, depending on whether you've got CO2 or not. I'm not running CO2 in my aquarium. It's a low-tech aquarium, so I don't use a whole lot of this. Every now and then I'll throw a little squirt in there. You don't want to use too much phosphate, because that will cause algae blooms. So you're only talking a few drops, so this will last a long time, and it's only $1.50 for this stuff. Perfectly safe. Doesn't cause any problems other than algae blooms if you use too much, but works perfectly well for your phosphates. The next product that I've got here, Spectracide Stump Remover. Now, I don't want you to just see this and say, oh, any old stump remover, I can just throw it in my aquarium. There are different kinds of stump removers. This one in particular is This brand in particular is potassium nitrate. So it's going to give two macro elements, potassium and nitrogen. So very, very, very helpful in the aquarium and very cheap. You're looking at maybe $7, $7.50 for this whole thing. It's a pound of it, I believe. Yep, 1 pound. So $7, and you can find it right down the street at the hardware store. This stuff is, you can find this pretty much anywhere. Spectracide is a real common brand that you can find at a few different stores. But you put in, you do your math on the nitrates. I usually for a low tech 100-gallon aquarium, that usually makes about a tablespoon and a half or 2 tablespoons once or twice a week, and then you just watch your nitrate levels. When your nitrate levels start to go up above about 20 parts per million, just quit it and let it go back down, and then start adding it again once the levels drop. Great product, easy to find. That way you don't have to pay shipping costs on getting your macros. This is another good product. This is Osmocote. You can see it's these little beads here. I'm going to open this up. See, it's these little tiny beads here. This is just a common houseplant fertilizer, and it's a soil additive fertilizer. So you're meant to take the little beads and mix it in with your soil, and it'll slow release over a period of time, and that means that it does the exact same thing in the aquarium. So what I do with them is I get an old ice cube tray, and then I fill the ice cube tray up with this stuff, throw some water in there, let it sit in the water for a while so it'll absorb the water, and then I throw it in the freezer and make ice cubes out of it. And then I'll just stick the ice cubes underneath the plants that are the heaviest root feeders, which is going to be basically my Amazon swords and to a degree the Vallisneria. And I'll just stick it in the soil underneath there, and that'll feed them for about a month and a half, 2 months. The only downside to this, which is going to be a downside to pretty much anything that you use, which is that these beads do stay in the aquarium. They don't just dissolve. It's basically just a clay product, and then the clay is the carrier for the fertilizer. So once the fertilizer is all used up, these beads stay in the aquarium, and you can see what that looks like. See that little yellow bead there? That's what happens when you dig them up on accident. And I've got a few of these guys. You can see there's some around there because like I said, this aquarium used to be fully planted, and I redid everything. And pulling up some of these plants, I pulled up a lot of this. It was at one time partially soiled, so I had done the exact same trick with the ice cubes, but I did it with soil instead of with the fertilizer. I just made a soil ice cube and would stick the ice cubes of soil into the substrate. And so as I pulled these plants up, you can see there's still quite a bit of detritus on the bottom, but it's not bad detritus. It's basically just soil, and the normal Miracle Grow soil that most people use for dirted aquariums, and it just popped up onto the surface of the water, or onto the surface of the soil, which is not a real huge issue, but if you're real particular about the way your soil looks, then that's going to be an issue for you. But for me, I don't really care. I think it's alright. And it also, like I said in my last video on the rocks, some of these fish like to dig into the substrate, and so having that organic compound in the substrate gives them something to root through, and is natural for them, and is nice and soft on their gills when they eject it through their gills. So that's fine with me. As far as the Osmocote goes, though, like I said, kind of a warning. They do stay in the soil, and if you are prone to digging through your soil, or if you use like a soil vacuum at all, you will pop them back up again, and they will show up, and you'll have to root them out. That should do it, though. Those are my main dosing ingredients for my aquarium, and like I said, I don't run a high-tech aquarium. There's no CO2 in there. Products like this guy, I did want to say like this. In a fast-moving aquarium like what I have right now, products like this and any kind of DIY CO2, or really any CO2 at all, is not really going to be worth your while, because the CO2, carbon dioxide, gets gassed off really easy, and the more water movement that you have, the easier it gasses off. So CO2, not really going to be worth it if you've got a lot of water movement, especially a lot of surface agitation like what I've got with the spray bar up here. I'm going for high oxygen over high carbon dioxide content because of the fish that I've got. So to me, the surface agitation is worth it, and if the CO2 suffers for it, then not a huge deal for me. I'll try to make it up in other ways. That should do it for this episode. The next one that I will do will be on the hood, and we'll talk about the lighting and what I did for the lighting. It's a pretty simple setup for the lighting, and I'll show you guys what I did, which is another do-it-yourself project. And we'll see you then. Thanks.